We've all encountered times when life seemed overwhelming, instances where the burden of our current situation made us doubt everything that came before. Perhaps you found yourself gazing at a blank wall, a medical report, a shattered relationship, or a setback, pondering, how can I move forward? The reality about obstacles is that they are unavoidable. You can't sidestep the hurt, the loss, or the letdown. However, you can decide how to respond to them, and that decision starts with something so straightforward yet frequently ignored and incredibly potent: your reason. That's the primary unyielding principle for surmounting life's hurdles. You must begin with your reason, because when you understand your reason, when you're linked to something greater than yourself, you can withstand almost anything. Individuals assume fortitude stems from ruggedness, but genuine strength arises from lucidity, and lucidity originates from intent. Let me recount a tale of an acquaintance, Sarah, a nurse specializing in pediatrics. For the past 10 years, she has worked in pediatric oncology, a demanding profession. Daily, she enters rooms where youngsters combat illnesses their bodies shouldn't even recognize. She has witnessed children pass away, seen parents crumble, held tiny hands during chemotherapy, sat on frigid hospital floors in the dead of night, and conveyed news no one ever wishes to articulate. Yet every morning, Sarah arrives with a sparkle in her eyes and optimism in her voice. Once I inquired, "How do you manage? How do you not collapse?" She gazed at me, composed and firm, and replied, "Because I understand my purpose here. I'm not here to halt the tempest, I'm here to be a beacon. I can't mend everything, but I can assist them in feeling secure, even if just for a short period." That's the influence of understanding your reason. It doesn't eliminate the anguish, and it doesn't simplify things, but it imparts significance to the struggle, and significance is what renders us resilient. So, I pose to you, what is your reason? What propels you to rise when everything within you desires to remain down? What draws you ahead when the future is unclear? Because if you're unaware of your reason, the tough days will overwhelm you. But if you are anchored in intent, the tough days will fortify you. Consider it this way: if you're adrift at sea, you can paddle all you desire, but if you're unaware of where land is, you're merely expending energy. When you're cognizant of your destination, every stroke is significant, even the tiniest ones. So, when you confront adversity, you don't need to be flawless. You don't need to possess all the solutions. You just need to recollect why you commenced and to persist in moving. Let's be candid, this isn't simple. Understanding your reason isn't a one-time revelation. It's not a catchphrase or something you display on a vision board and disregard. It's a routine, a dedication, a daily reconnection to something profound. You'll encounter days when your reason feels remote, when the clamor is louder than the intent, when dread is louder than conviction. That's all right. Those are the days you revert to the fundamentals. You halt, you contemplate, you question yourself. Who am I doing this for? What kind of legacy do I aspire to leave? Who benefits because I don't surrender? Let me convey what I've gleaned from pioneers, competitors, parents, survivors, and individuals who've been to the brink and returned. Those who triumph over the toughest trials aren't superhuman. They aren't fearless or always the most intelligent or robust. They are the ones who decline to lose sight of their reason. They allow it to steer them through the haze. They let it be their anchor when everything else feels unsteady. And when that reason is robust enough, when it's anchored in service and influence, in something greater than self-importance, it evolves into a force you can rely on, a rationale to persist when nothing else is sensible. Because here's the reality: storms will arise. You can't evade pain or govern every loss. But you can govern your reaction. You can determine what narrative you wish to compose amidst the chaos. You can opt for intent over panic. I believe the world doesn't merely require individuals who endure hardships. The world necessitates individuals who ascend because of them. People who perceive adversity not as the conclusion, but as a fresh commencement. And that kind of mindset, that resilience, doesn't stem from merely being robust. It originates from being anchored. Your reason is your anchor. So perhaps your reason is your family, a dream you've nurtured since youth, a vow you made to someone no longer present, or maybe it's the conviction that your life, as chaotic as it may be, still holds value, still has something to contribute to the world. Whatever it is, discover it, and when life knocks you down, and it will, revert to it repeatedly. Because when you commence with your reason, you don't just endure challenges, you surpass them. And that is how you initiate overcoming. We inhabit a world that idolizes perfection. Peruse social media and you'll encounter the highlights, the polished instances, the filtered triumphs, the curated versions of life that create the illusion that everyone else has it all figured out. But here's the truth no one shares. Perfection is an illusion, and pursuing it is the quickest route to burnout. Progress, not perfection, is the unyielding principle. You see, overcoming life's challenges isn't about executing everything flawlessly. It's not about never erring or possessing an immaculate plan. It's about opting to advance, one modest step at a time, even when the path is disorderly, especially when the path is disorderly. Let me share a narrative about a man named James who, after years in a desk job, decided to run his first marathon. He wasn't a runner. In fact, he could barely ascend the flight of stairs without gasping for air. But he established a goal, not to triumph, not to outpace anyone, but simply to complete it. He commenced training. On the first day, he couldn't manage a mile. His lungs burned, his legs gave out, and his self-doubt screamed louder than anything else. But the next day, he laced up again, ran half a mile farther, then a bit more, and then a bit more. 8 months later, he crossed the finish line of his first marathon. Not swiftly, not effortlessly, but he completed it. And when I asked him how he persisted when it felt unfeasible, he said, "I ceased attempting to be perfect and merely concentrated on being better than yesterday." That's it. That's the mindset. Because perfection will paralyze you. It persuades you that if you can't do it impeccably, it's not worth doing at all. But progress liberates you. It grants you permission to be human and room to grow. Let me share a narrative about a man named James who, after years in a desk job, decided to run his first marathon. He wasn't a runner. In fact, he could barely ascend a flight of stairs without gasping for air. But he established a goal, not to triumph, not to outpace anyone, but simply to complete it. He commenced training. On the first day, he couldn't manage a mile. His lungs burned, his legs gave out, and his self-doubt screamed louder than anything else. But the next day, he laced up again, ran half a mile farther, then a bit more, and then a bit more. 8 months later, he crossed the finish line of his first marathon. Not swiftly, not effortlessly, but he completed it. And when I asked him how he persisted when it felt unfeasible, he said, "I ceased attempting to be perfect and merely concentrated on being better than yesterday." That's it. That's the mindset. Because perfection will paralyze you. It persuades you that if you can't do it impeccably, it's not worth doing at all. But progress liberates you. It grants you permission to be human and room to grow.
And here's what transpires when you fall in love with progress. The fear of failure loosens its grip on you. You cease worrying about being incorrect and start focusing on getting it right eventually. You stop measuring yourself by others' timelines and start constructing your own. That's where confidence begins. We've been conditioned to believe that success must appear a certain way: clean, linear, swift. But real growth is chaotic, filled with false starts, painful lessons, and invisible victories. You might be scaling a mountain right now, feeling like you're getting nowhere. But just because progress is slow doesn't mean it's not happening. In fact, the slowest steps are often the most crucial. Consider a seed buried in the soil. You don't see what's happening beneath the surface, but it's growing roots, preparing, and one day it breaks through. Not because of a sudden surge of energy, but because of quiet, consistent progress. And that's what we're doing when we face challenges. We're growing roots, building something beneath the surface that no one else can see. And that work matters. It's not flashy or perfect, but it's powerful. Yet we keep falling into this trap, the trap of comparison. We look at someone else's chapter 20 and wonder why we're still on chapter 3. But their journey isn't your journey. Their progress isn't your progress. You're not here to win someone else's race, you're here to run your own. And maybe your race is uphill, maybe your race is slower. That's okay. What matters is that you keep running. When we stop chasing perfection, we start creating space for real change. We allow ourselves to try new things, to ask for help, to fall down and get back up. That's how resilience is built, not through being flawless, but through being willing to start, even when you're scared, even when you're unsure. There is something incredibly brave about being a beginner. It takes courage to be the person who's willing to say, "I'm not there yet, but I'm on my way." That mindset, that humility, is what opens doors. That's what creates momentum. And momentum is the secret weapon, because when you take one step, even the tiniest step, something shifts. You build belief, you build evidence, you prove to yourself that progress is possible. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. Progress builds trust with yourself. It's how you become someone you can count on. And that relationship, the one you have with yourself, that's the foundation for every other success in your life. You don't need to wait until everything's perfect to begin, you just need to begin. Start messy, start scared, start unsure, but start. Because the truth is, you don't become confident by waiting to feel ready, you become confident by doing the thing again and again until readiness catches up. And yes, some days you'll feel like you're moving backward, you'll fall short, you'll make mistakes. But those days aren't failures, they're part of the rhythm. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's still progress. If you want to overcome life's challenges, let go of the need to do it perfectly. Perfection is a moving target. Progress is a direction. So today, ask yourself, what's one small thing I can do that moves me forward? What's one action that honors where I am, but also where I want to be?
Because the people who make it through the hardest things, they're not perfect, they're not superhuman. They're just relentless, committed to showing up, to learning, to growing, even when no one is watching, even when it's hard. So stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting for perfect. Start moving, because every step, no matter how small, is proof that you're still in the fight. And that is what overcoming looks like. There's something no one tells you when you begin the journey of trying to become your best self. No one says this is going to hurt. Not just once, not just in the beginning, but over and over again. And not because you're doing it wrong, but because you're doing it right. Growth and comfort do not coexist. In fact, the moment things begin to feel too easy, too predictable, too safe, you're probably no longer growing. Discomfort is not a punishment. It's a signal, a sign that you're stretching into new territory. And that matters more than almost anything else. Let me tell you about a man I met who spent 20 years in a corporate role. He had the title, the paycheck, the corner office, the markers of success. But he also had this gnawing sense that something was missing. He told me, "I felt like I was winning a game I didn't want to be playing." So he left at age 48. He walked away from the predictable path to start a small nonprofit for at-risk youth. And let me be honest with you, the first 2 years were brutal. The money dried up, the structure disappeared, and every day he woke up in fear, questioning himself. He was exhausted, uncomfortable, in over his head. But 5 years later, that same man looked me in the eye and said, "I've never been more alive. Every day I'm terrified, but every day I know I'm doing something that matters." That's what discomfort gives you. Aliveness, not the fake kind you get from distractions, not the short burst you get from dopamine hits. I'm talking about the kind of aliveness that comes from doing hard things that align with your values, the kind of aliveness that makes you proud when no one's watching. Here's what we often misunderstand. We think discomfort means we're on the wrong path, but often it's the opposite. Discomfort means you're evolving. It means you're stepping into a new version of yourself that doesn't quite fit yet, like a pair of shoes just a little too tight. But give it time, break them in, let them stretch. Think about the gym. What builds muscle? Resistance. You lift weights not because it's easy, but because the struggle creates strength. It tears the muscle just enough to rebuild it stronger than before.
Growth requires resistance. There's no shortcut around that. So why do we run from discomfort in other areas of life? Why do we avoid difficult conversations, hard choices, new challenges? Because we're wired for safety. Our brains are designed to keep us alive, not to help us thrive. But the best things in life aren't found in the safe zone. They're found just beyond that. That's the edge. The edge is uncomfortable, but it's also where all the possibility lives.
When you face a challenge, you have two options. You can retreat into comfort, the old patterns, the familiar excuses, or you can lean into the discomfort and trust that there's something valuable on the other side. That choice is what separates those who grow from those who stay stuck. And listen, I get it. Discomfort isn't fun. It's not glamorous. Sometimes it looks like sitting alone in your thoughts and confronting hard truths. Sometimes it's waking up early to do the work no one will see. Sometimes it's admitting you don't know the answer and asking for help. But every time you choose discomfort with intention, you get a little stronger. You become someone who doesn't just react to life, you shape it. I once worked with a young entrepreneur who was terrified of public speaking, but he had a message that mattered. His fear nearly kept him silent, but he made a deal with himself. He would say yes to every speaking opportunity that came his way for 1 year, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. He bombed the first talk, he froze during the second, but by the 10th, he was starting to find his rhythm. And by the end of the year, he was giving keynotes with confidence, not because the fear disappeared, but because he learned to move forward with it. Discomfort didn't break him, it built him. And here's a sign we all need to hear. The presence of fear, of tension, of unease, it doesn't mean you're not ready. It means you're human. It means you're growing. So what if we stopped seeing discomfort as a sign to stop and started seeing it as a sign to keep going? What if we reframe the struggle as evidence that we're becoming more than who we were yesterday? The truth is, you cannot grow and remain the same. Transformation requires tension, and that tension will stretch you, challenge you, sometimes even break you, but only so something stronger can emerge. It's like the process of forging steel. Extreme heat, relentless pressure, but the result? Strength, resilience, endurance. The same is true for people. The people you admire most, the ones who lead with clarity, who live with purpose, who make a difference, they didn't get there by staying comfortable. They got there by stepping into discomfort again and again and trusting that something better was being born in the process. So if life feels hard right now, if you're overwhelmed, uncertain, scared, don't rush to escape it. Sit with it, learn from it, let it do its work. You're not being punished, you're being prepared. And one day, not too far from now, you'll look back and realize that season of discomfort, that moment of uncertainty, it was the turning point. Because discomfort is not the enemy, it's the invitation. The question is, will you accept it? No one does it alone. We like to talk about strength as if it's a solo pursuit, the late nights, the hustle, the lone hero rising against the odds. But the truth is, behind every strong person is a circle of people who stood beside them when the world felt like it was falling apart. Your circle matters more than you think. When life gets hard, and it will, the people around you will either lift you or leave you. They will either build your courage or break your spirit. That's why the fourth unbreakable rule for overcoming life's challenges is this: protect your circle, because your circle is your fortress. Let me tell you about a woman named Dani. She was an elite athlete, a national champion with sponsorships and titles under her belt. But during a routine training session, she tore her ACL. The injury ended her season and nearly ended her career. She told me, "The pain wasn't just physical. I lost who I thought I was." In the weeks that followed, she found herself spiraling. Doubt crept in, depression followed. But what kept her going wasn't willpower. It wasn't some secret inner strength. It was a friend who showed up at her door every morning, coffee in one hand, silence in the other. He didn't try to fix her. He didn't say much. He just sat with her every day. And slowly, something shifted. That simple, consistent presence reminded her she wasn't alone. It reminded her she was still worth showing up for. That friend, that piece of her circle, helped her heal long before her body did.
We underestimate the power of presence. We think we have to say the right thing, do the right thing, have all the answers. But sometimes the most powerful gift you can give someone or receive is simply knowing you're not facing the dark alone. That's why you need people in your life who aren't just there for the parties and the promotions, but who are there for the panic attacks, the breakdowns, the late night deaths. People who aren't afraid of your pain. People who don't flinch when things get messy. You see, a fortress isn't just about protection, it's about grounding. When the storms of life hit, your circle becomes the place where you can fall apart without falling away. A place where you're safe but not stuck, supported but still challenged to grow. And here's the thing, your circle doesn't have to be big. In fact, it shouldn't be. It's not about how many people are in your life, it's about who's really in your corner, who's willing to walk through the fire with you, who shows up without being asked. We live in a time where we're more connected than ever and yet more isolated than ever. We have hundreds, sometimes thousands of followers. But ask yourself this, who could you call at 2 a.m. if everything fell apart? Who would show up not out of obligation, but because they believe in you? That's your real circle, and those people, they're worth everything. But there's another side to this. Just as important as knowing who's in your circle is knowing who shouldn't be. Because not everyone deserves access to your struggle. Not everyone is healthy for your healing. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is say goodbye to people who keep you small. You are allowed to outgrow relationships. You are allowed to walk away from people who drain your energy, who feed your fear, who keep you locked in patterns that no longer serve the person you're trying to become. There's a quote I love that says, "You become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." So look around. Are your 5 building you up, or are they keeping you where you've always been? Because energy is contagious, mindsets are contagious, belief is contagious. When you surround yourself with people who are growing, who are grounded, who are generous with their hope, you absorb that. You become more courageous simply by being in their presence. And when you're part of a strong circle, you don't just receive support, you offer it. You become someone else's safe place. You get to be the person who listens without judgment, who believes when someone else forgets how, who holds the line when someone else is slipping. That kind of mutual strength is rare and it's powerful, because together we are always stronger than we are alone. I want you to think about the people in your life who've made you feel seen, the ones who didn't flinch at your tears, the ones who held you accountable because they saw your potential. The ones who didn't just tell you what you wanted to hear, but what you needed to hear, lovingly, honestly. Those people, that's your foundation. They remind you of who you are when you forget. They believe in your future when you're too tired to keep believing in yourself. They speak truth when your mind is spinning with lies. And in a world that constantly tries to convince you that you have to be everything for everyone, your circle is the place where you can just be, where you don't have to perform, where you're enough exactly as you are. So build your circle with intention. Be slow to open the gates. Be even slower to let people stay who don't respect the space. Because this fortress, it's sacred. And when the storms come, and they will, it's what will hold you together. No one climbs the mountain alone and rebuilds after loss alone. No one survives the hard seasons without help. So if you're struggling right now, don't isolate. Reach out. Let someone in. And if you're doing okay, look around. Someone near you might be silently drowning. Be their circle, be their anchor, because this life is hard, but it's not meant to be lived alone. And sometimes the strongest thing you'll ever do is lean on someone else. Pain is inevitable. It's a part of life. No one escapes, no matter how talented you are, how careful, how strong. Loss, failure, heartbreak, disappointment, they find us all. But while pain may be universal, the way we respond to it, that's what makes the difference. Because pain without purpose feels like punishment, but pain with purpose, that's transformation. When we give meaning to our struggle, everything changes. It doesn't take the pain away, but it gives it a place, gives it a reason, gives us something to reach for when everything else feels like it's falling apart. There's a young woman I once met who had survived a traumatic childhood, abuse, abandonment, instability. For years, she carried the weight of it in silence, thinking it had broken her.
But one day she made a choice. She began sharing her story, not for sympathy, but for service. She started speaking to young girls in foster care, showing them what survival looks like, what strength sounds like. And she told me, when I turned my pain into a purpose, it stopped owning me. That's what this rule is about. It's not about pretending everything happens for a reason, because honestly, sometimes it doesn't. Some things are just unfair, some things are just hard. But even in those moments, we get to choose. Will I be consumed by this, or will I create from it? Purpose gives us a way forward. It's not a light switch you flip. It's a process, really, a posture, a decision to look your pain in the face and say, you don't get the last word.
And let me be clear, purpose doesn't always look grand. It doesn't always mean starting a nonprofit or launching a movement. Sometimes purpose is quiet. It's waking up one more time than you wanted to give up. It's choosing to be kind when you have every reason not to be. It's deciding that the story doesn't end here. We don't need a perfect plan to find purpose. We just need a reason that's stronger than our excuses. Think of the people who inspire you the most. Chances are they didn't get there through comfort. They got there through pain, but they chose to do something with it. That's what made them resilient, not just surviving, but serving. And that's the key. Purpose always involves someone else, because when we focus only on ourselves, our pain becomes heavier, it becomes louder. But when we shift our attention outward, when we ask, who can I help because of what I've been through, that's when we begin to heal. There's something powerful that happens when we realize that the very thing that tried to break us is the thing we now use to build someone else. Our pain becomes a bridge, a tool, a source of connection. And connection, at its core, is what we're all searching for. When you share your purpose, when you live it, you remind others that they're not alone. You remind them that pain is not the end of the story, that something beautiful can still rise from the wreckage. But here's the challenge. Finding purpose doesn't always feel good. In fact, sometimes it hurts more before it heals, because it means revisiting the things we'd rather forget. It means choosing vulnerability when we'd rather be numb. It means stepping into the fire, not because we want to suffer, but because we know something stronger is waiting on the other side. And that's a grave choice. It's a choice to believe that who you are becoming is more powerful than what you've been through. It's a choice to believe that pain is not the enemy, it's the invitation.
Purpose gives pain a job. It gives it a direction. It allows you to carry it differently. Instead of dragging it like a weight, you begin to wear it like armor. Not the kind that shuts you off from the world, but the kind that reminds you what you've survived, that reminds you what you're capable of, that makes you brave. In a world that keeps trying to convince you to play small, pain isn't weakness. It's proof that you've lived, that you've risked, that you've loved. And if you can turn that pain into purpose, you become unstoppable. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what now? You stop defining yourself by the worst day of your life and start defining yourself by what you did after it. That's the power of purpose. It's not just about achievement, it's about alignment. It's about living in a way that feels connected to who you really are and who you're still becoming. And the beautiful part is this: your purpose doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be clear right away. It just has to be honest. It has to be yours. Start where you are. Start with what you've been through. Start with what breaks your heart or lights your fire. Somewhere in that space, your purpose is waiting. And when you find it, even just a glimpse of it, everything shifts. The pain doesn't vanish, but it stops defining you. It becomes focus. So if you're in the middle of something hard right now, don't rush through it. Don't numb it. Ask yourself, what could this be for? Who could this help someday? What is this shaping in me that comfort never could? And if you're on the other side of something painful, if you've made it through, don't hide that story. Share it. Someone out there is living what you've already survived. Be the proof that healing is possible. Be the signpost that says, keep going. There's purpose on the other side. Because in the end, your story, your honest, messy, beautiful story, could be the light that helps someone else find their way.